CAN works directly with community groups in translating its vision into specific community actions. It works with residents in various public housing estates, supporting them in transforming their communities. In the early 1990s, following the emergence of the Ballymun Community Coalition, CAN supported the local housing task force in its plans for refurbishment. In more recent years, CAN supported the residents in social regeneration programmes in St Michael's Estate, Dolphin House, O'Devany Gardens and in Fatima Mansions, whose refurbishment adjacent to the Lewis line was completed in 2009. In a similar vein, CAN also provides practical support around specific policy issues such as health inequalities, the development of integrated service models for children in communities, and also in developing participatory models for work with older persons. Such examples of leadership in action provide an account of CAN's work, giving expression to ideas about ground-up capacity building and leadership training.
That it can happen, but that's the bit that is ongoing. So that is where the programme is at. That's the thinking. That was the thinking behind it, and the overall vision is that one of really rooting down leadership and capacity building at a local level. So just wanted to tell you the story.
An important example of CAN's model of leadership in action is demonstrated in its approach to housing rights with residents groups in the Dolphin House housing estate. With the downturn in the Irish economy in 2008, many long-promised housing regeneration programmes were abandoned. This was a major setback for the affected communities, who found themselves, after years of working in partnership with state agencies, having to protest. In Dolphin House, as with many other estates, many of the flats had serious defects, with ongoing sewage problems and persistent dampness giving rise to significant health problems, particularly for children growing up.
My name is Anne Kinsler, and I have lived and reared my son at Dolphin House for the last 16 years. In this time, like a lot of my fellow residents, I have always had a problem with sewage and dampness in my flat, with no solution from Dublin City Council to fix these problems. About a year and a half ago, CAN approached residents and community workers in Rialto with the idea of using a human rights-based approach to address our problems. It was explained to us that these conditions were actually a violation of our rights, and that under the United Nations Convention of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the Irish state is responsible for ensuring that this does not happen. So we formed the Rialto Rights in Action group.
As well as forming a collaborative community group, this project also focused on building knowledge, which involved community members researching and documenting the issue of local housing conditions. The group also brought forward several separate stories from residents in relation to these conditions, which were told face to camera and presented at a public hearing held to inquire into the housing conditions in May 2010.
Today's exercise is to actually allow people to talk about their own lived experience.
The show, it comes out the show. It's not too bad at the show, I don't mind that.
It's the problem with storage.
When it comes up your back.
I moved into the flat.
I mean,
I'm 8 years living in that flat, and I've had numerous amount of work done, and there still is no complete success with it.
I have to say the windows open at all times in the bathroom. They fixed it, they put new ceiling, new plasterboard on top of the plaster, came down on top of my head.
It's outside the hall door, I can't let my kids out to play. They've no quality of life. Again, the playground is, you can't let them cross there. That's in a bad way as well.
We're going to be affected long term with this, and I mean for Dublin City Council to make all these excuses that you have mould on your wall because the bed is there or your vents aren't open, it's excuse after excuse after excuse, and we're all...
During this hearing, the residents' personal experiences were validated through an international panel of experts, which included Maurice Manning, President of the Irish Commission for Human Rights.
If you intend to use it, international law is law, it's our law. It's not just something out there. So we have signed up to it.
And it's clear, Pádraig was clear, Maurice was clear, and I presume you're clear as well, that what you've seen and what's been happening here in Dolphin House is a breach of that UN covenant.
Yes.
No doubt.
Yes.
Is a breach of a UN covenant.
Well, I mean, it's clear, even in terms of the basic issue about health, what we're hearing about the threat to health. is absolutely clear, and we're seeing the evidence of that. And again, that's why this project is so valuable, because the residents have collected that evidence, and the stories give us the evidence about what's happening. They've got statistical evidence about the percentage of residents who are experiencing different adverse
and we must never forget
conditions.
this. You are the people who have identified these issues, and you're the people who are going to lead the change.
The international panel's endorsement proved valuable, both in boosting residents' confidence and in bringing pressure on state agencies. At the first public hearing held in May 2010, there was no input from the state authorities in relation to the residents' concerns. By the time of the third monitoring hearing 2 years later, the City Council had become highly engaged and outlined plans for dealing with the problem. The Rialto Rights in Action Group continues to maintain pressure on the Council, and alongside CAN, it has come together with other tenants groups from communities in Dublin and Limerick, seen meeting here in Liberty Hall, to step up on a more national basis the campaign for reinstating previously promised regeneration programmes. Rialto Rights in Action is an example of bringing a group together around the issue of public housing, and to use leadership training to explore common interests, with a focus on using a legal document, in this case, the 1966 UN International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, as leverage for asserting the state's failure to implement its own policies on housing. From the outset, the group's strategy was premised on getting the state to answer publicly for these failures and exercise leadership in bringing remedy. CAN's involvement with both the Rialto and national groups provides a practical illustration of the possibilities of building community actions from the ground up, starting with people's individual personal stories and linking these to systemic issues and giving leadership to a collective response.
People who live with inequality and the denial of rights tend to have a very individualised, isolated experience of that. They live in their own homes, they haven't enough money, or they live with poor housing, poor health or whatever. Very individualised, very easy, and very often they take on feelings of inadequacy, feelings of failure, feelings of shame, all of that. So the whole part of building capacity is to break that silence. And it's about encouraging people to speak out loud about that lived experience, to start doing it through story, to start hearing their own voice, to give expression to it. When you have a group of people who start telling their stories and they begin to see the patterns forming across the stories, and they begin to move from feeling inadequate to feeling incredibly powerful, that they begin to realise that not only have they been amazing people to cope with the inadequacies with the inequalities that they've been faced with, but that there's something wrong with the system that has so many of them experiencing the same thing. It's the first point at which people begin to take power. And you move from a situation where people are no longer talking about their needs, they're beginning to talk about issues. A significant shift and the beginnings of capacity building.